She turned my office into a yoga studio. I owned the building, the parking structure, and the land under every square foot of her daddy's headquarters. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Tuesday, 2:47 p.m. I was sitting across from Jenna Kirkwood in what used to be the main conference room. I redesigned that room in 2019, picked the table, sourced the lighting fixtures myself from a distributor in Raleigh because the original vendor wanted to charge Monarch 40% over market. I remember every decision I made in that room. And now, Jenna Kirkwood was using it to fire me. She didn't look up from her MacBook when she said the words. "We're restructuring the leadership footprint, Frank. Your role is being optimized out of the org chart. This is about agile infrastructure, fresh energy." She slid a manila folder across the table. Termination paperwork. The tab read Hensley, Frank D, in block letters. The HR representative stood near the door. Young woman, mid-20s, holding a tablet against her chest like a shield. She wouldn't make eye contact. She looked like she was watching someone defuse a bomb. I looked at the folder, looked at Jenna, looked at the HR rep. I said nothing for 4 seconds. Jenna tilted her head. That rehearsed look. The one she used when she wanted you to know she was being patient with you. Generous even. Like she was doing you a favor by explaining something you should already understand. "This isn't personal," she said. "It's about the company's future." "Sure, my name is Frank Hensley. I'm 50 years old. I spent 9 years in the United States Marine Corps, enlisted at 19, honorably discharged at 28 as a staff sergeant. My specialty was logistics and combat service support, supply chains, physical assets, forward operating base infrastructure. I managed everything that kept a base standing and functional in places where nothing was designed to stand or function. I deployed overseas twice. I joined Monarch Commercial Group when I was 33, Director of Facilities and Asset Management. 17 years. 17 years. I want you to sit with that number. When I started, Monarch was running $340 million in managed commercial assets and had one office that smelled like old coffee and carpet glue. By the time Jenna Kirkwood slid that folder across the table, Monarch Commercial Group was valued at $2.6 billion. I'm not saying that was all me, but I negotiated every utility contract the company depended on, every maintenance agreement, every insurance policy. I knew where every pipe ran in every building we operated. I knew which city inspector to call at 2 a.m. when a roof membrane failed in a thunderstorm, and I knew him by first name because I'd called him 11 times over 17 years, and he only picked up because it was me. That's not a resume. That's institutional memory. The kind you can't download from a spreadsheet or optimize with a wellness audit. But I need to tell you about Carol first, because you can't understand what happened in that conference room at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday unless you understand what I'd already given this company. Carol Ann Hensley, née Mitchell, my wife, diagnosed with ovarian cancer 7 years ago. I was 43. Marcus, our son, was 15. The hospice period lasted 11 months. 11 months of watching the person you built your life with disappear by fractions, while the phone kept ringing with facilities emergencies that only you could solve. I worked through almost all of it. I missed 23 of Marcus's high school baseball games. 23. I know the exact number because Marcus kept a schedule on the refrigerator, and after each game, he'd circle the ones I made and cross out the ones I didn't. He never said a word about it. He's his mother's son that way. Carol's last coherent weekend, the last weekend she could still talk in full sentences and recognize Marcus without the fog pulling her away, I wasn't there. A burst water main at the satellite office. The city inspector would only deal with me by name. I drove 3 hours each way. I spent Saturday and Sunday in a flooded basement in dress shoes because I didn't have time to go home for boots. Carol died the following Thursday. I was back at my desk on Monday because I didn't know what else to do. Monarch sent flowers, lilies. The card said, "With deepest sympathy, the Monarch family. William Kirkwood, the founder, called me personally. His voice cracked. I believe that was genuine. Jenna Kirkwood had been in middle school. If you've ever had a boss or been in a situation like this, hit that like button and subscribe. Now, 2016. This is the part of the story that matters. Monarch was bleeding. A development deal in South Charlotte had gone sideways. Bad site survey, compounded by a contractor lawsuit. And William Kirkwood needed liquidity fast. $14 million in 90 days. The banks were crawling. Interest rates were unfavorable. Bill Kirkwood was a builder, not a finance guy, and his CFO at the time was telling him to sell off properties to raise the cash. I'd spent years saving. Military pension, careful investments, living small. I had capital sitting in accounts doing nothing useful. I called Ray Ellis. Ray and I overlapped at Camp Lejeune. He was a JAG officer then, captain, Marine Corps. Now, he runs a boutique real estate and commercial property law firm in Charlotte. Specialty is LLC, structuring and contract enforcement. He's the kind of lawyer who reads a handshake the way a structural engineer reads a foundation crack. He sees what's going to fail before anyone else feels the tremor. Ray structured Hensley Asset Partners, LLC, in 2 weeks. Clean, notarized, filed with the state. My name as sole member and manager. I purchased 4 properties at fair market value. Distressed pricing, yes, but documented, appraised, arm's length. Every dollar accounted for. No Monarch resources used. No Monarch time. My personal funds, my personal attorney. Recorded in county deed records. The 4 properties. Monarch's corporate headquarters building. The satellite office. The primary client meeting center where every major deal signing and presentation happened. And the central parking structure that served all 3. William Kirkwood shook my hand in his office. I can still smell the leather and cigar smoke. He had tears in his eyes. You're saving my company, Frank. I said, I know. They never formalized a lease. Bill never thought they'd need one. In his mind, the handshake was the deal. Frank owns the buildings. Monarch keeps operating out of them. And eventually they'd work something out on paper. Ray told me different. He said, Bill shook hands with you. That's not a lease. That's a courtesy. He told me to register the deeds under the LLC, keep the filings current, pay the property taxes on time, and never mention it unless it became necessary. File it under the LLC. You can always formalize later. They never did. 8 years. The deeds sat in county records. 4 of them. My name on everyone. No one in Monarch's current management team ever reviewed the underlying deed history. Not Sandra Mitchell in legal. Not the CFO. Not the board. And certainly not a 24-year-old with an online MBA from Western Governors University, completed in 10 months, who thought optimizing the leadership footprint was a strategy. 3 weeks before the firing, I was walking past Jenna's office. The door was cracked open. The hallway carried sound better than people realized. I heard my name. Hensley won't cause problems. He's 50 years old. His wife is gone. His kid is grown. He needs this job. He'll fall in line or he'll leave quietly. Either way, we get the office space we need. I stood in that hallway for 11 seconds. I counted them. The way you count seconds when you're deciding whether the next thing you do will be quiet or loud. Then I walked back to my desk, opened my laptop, and sent Ray Ellis an email with 1 sentence. Pull out the deeds. I want to understand my options. Ray replied in 4 minutes. 4 of them. County records. Your name on everyone. Call me when you're ready. I closed the laptop. That was 3 weeks before Tuesday at 2:47 p.m. So when Jenna slid that termination folder across the table, when she said the words agile infrastructure and fresh energy without once looking up from her MacBook, when the HR representative stood by the door clutching her tablet and staring at the floor. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why. I didn't say this isn't fair. I didn't say I deserve better. I signed the acknowledgement of receipt. Nothing else. I stood up, picked up the single-framed photo from my desk. Marcus in his cap and gown. University of Tennessee. Last spring. Civil engineering. His mother's smile. I shook the HR representative's hand. Not Jenna's. I took the elevator down, walked through the lobby, pushed through the glass doors into the parking garage. A parking garage I owned. I sat in my truck. The engine was off. The concrete around me smelled like motor oil and old rain. I pulled out my phone. 3:15 p.m. I called Ray Ellis. He picked up on the second ring. Ray, it's Frank. I know who it is. What happened? They let me go. Involuntary. Effective immediately. 4 seconds of silence. Then Ray said one word. Good. If you've ever had a boss or been in a situation like this, hit that like button and subscribe. Ray didn't say good the way a cruel person says it. He said it the way a demolition engineer says it when someone finally clears the blast radius. You still have those deeds filed clean? I asked. 4 of them. County records. Your name on everyone. LLC filings are current. Property taxes paid through the end of the fiscal year. Frank, I've been keeping this paperwork warm for 8 years. It's ready when you are. I'm ready. Then come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring coffee, not the good stuff. We're going to be here a while. I hung up, sat in that truck for another 6 minutes. The parking garage was quiet. 3 levels of poured concrete and rebar, 247 spaces. Drainage system I personally redesigned in 2018 after the original contractor cut corners on the slope grade. I knew every crack in every column. I knew the weight load rating on every floor. I knew the fire suppression system ran on a dedicated loop because I'd argued with the county fire marshal for 3 weeks to get the variance approved. And Jenna Kirkwood didn't know I owned it. I turned the key, drove home, fed Rex, poured 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff, not the daily drinker. Sat on the back deck and watched the sky go dark over Charlotte. My phone buzzed once. Text from Dale Cooper. Just heard. This is wrong, Frank. Everyone knows it. I typed back, I know. That was all I said to anyone that night. The next morning, Wednesday, I was at Ray's office at 7:15 a.m. 2 black coffees from the gas station on Providence Road. Ray was already at his desk with 4 folders spread across the conference table, each one labeled with a property address and a deed registration number. Ray walked me through it like a briefing. Calm, precise. The same register we both learned in the Corps, where information is delivered clean and without decoration because lives depend on clarity. Here's where we are, Ray said. Hensley Asset Partners, LLC, holds fee simple title to all 4 properties. Recorded deeds. County Registrar's Office. No encumbrances. No liens. No mortgage. You own these outright. And Monarch's occupancy status? Monarch Commercial Group has no written lease agreement with your LLC. Never did. Bill Kirkwood's handshake in 2016 was a personal courtesy, not a legal instrument. Under North Carolina commercial unlawful detainer statutes, Monarch is currently occupying your properties without a lease, without written permission from the title holder, and without paying rent. They are, legally speaking, holdover occupants. Meaning what exactly? Meaning you can issue formal demand letters and eviction notices, certified mail, process server. The statute gives them a defined window to vacate or negotiate. But given that there's no lease to contest and no tenancy agreement to litigate, their legal position is functionally 0. I looked at the 4 folders. 4 properties, 3 office buildings, 1 parking structure, the physical foundation of a $2.6 billion company. Draft the notices, I said. Already started. Ray slid a document across the table. Demand letter template, Eviction notice template. I need your signature on the authorization as sole member of the LLC. We send tomorrow via certified mail and process server to 3 addresses: corporate headquarters, satellite office, and the client meeting center. I signed. Ray looked at me over the top of his reading glasses. Frank, once these go out, there's no quiet resolution. You understand that. I understand perfectly. Bill Kirkwood is going to call you. He might. What are you going to say? Nothing. Bill had 8 years to formalize a lease. He had 8 years to treat this like the business arrangement it was. He chose to treat it like a handshake between friends. And then his granddaughter fired the friend. Ray nodded, gathered the folders. Notices go out Thursday morning. Certified return receipt. Process server hits all 3 locations by noon. Thursday, 72 hours after the firing, 11:47 a.m. A process server walked into the lobby of Monarch Commercial Group's corporate headquarters. He asked for the office of the Chief Operating Officer. The receptionist directed him to the 3rd floor. He handed the envelope to Jenna Kirkwood's executive assistant because Jenna was in a meeting, a cultural reset workshop she'd scheduled for the entire leadership team. Simultaneously, a second process server delivered an identical envelope to the satellite office. A third delivered to the client meeting center. Certified mail backup copies arrived at all 3 addresses by 2 p.m. Each envelope contained the same documents. A formal demand letter from Hensley Asset Partners LLC, identifying Frank Douglas Hensley as sole member and manager, asserting fee simple ownership of the property, and demanding that Monarch Commercial Group either execute a formal commercial lease at fair market rates within 30 days or vacate the premises. Attached were copies of the recorded county deeds, the LLC operating agreement, and a legal opinion letter from Raymond Ellis, Esquire, confirming Monarch's status as an unlawful holdover occupant with no lease rights, no tenancy protections, and no legal basis for continued occupancy. The annual lease rate demanded across all 4 properties, $4.3 million per year. Non-negotiable. Payable to Hensley Asset Partners, LLC. Effective immediately upon execution, with back rent calculations attached for the period of unauthorized occupancy since 2016. Meanwhile, I was at home. Rex was asleep on the kitchen floor. I was drinking black coffee and reading the news on my laptop. My phone was on the counter. Silent. I didn't check it once. Now let me tell you what Jenna Kirkwood was doing during those 72 hours between the firing and the notices. Because this is important. This is who she was. Wednesday morning, one day after firing me, Jenna sent a company-wide email. Subject line: exciting changes to our leadership structure. The email thanked me for my years of dedicated service and announced that the Facilities and Asset Management Department, which she had already renamed Operational Experience 3 months earlier, would be strategically repositioned under a modernized framework. She used the phrase cultural reset twice. She used agile once. She used fresh energy once. By Wednesday afternoon, she had posted on LinkedIn. I know this because Dale Cooper screenshotted it and texted it to me. I didn't ask him to. He just did. The post read, "Tough decisions are the hallmark of real leadership. Excited to continue optimizing Monarch's footprint for the future. This is what strategic repositioning looks like. Hashtag leadership, hashtag commercial real estate, hashtag fresh energy." It had 340 likes by Thursday morning. By Thursday, she had commissioned a contractor to begin converting my old office into the wellness space she'd been talking about for months. Himalayan salt lamp, essential oil diffuser, cork flooring, yoga mats in a basket by the door, the whiteboard where I'd drawn utility easement diagrams in dry erase marker, diagrams that mapped the infrastructure of 3 buildings and a parking garage, diagrams that represented 17 years of institutional knowledge, wiped clean and replaced with a motivational poster that said, "Breathe." She posted that on LinkedIn too. Photo of the yoga studio with the caption, "Human-centered workspace design. This is what modernization looks like at Monarch Commercial Group. Hashtag wellness forward." Then, Thursday at 11:47 a.m., the process server arrived. Jenna's executive assistant brought the envelope into the Cultural Reset workshop. Jenna opened it in front of 8 people. Dale told me later she read the first page, stopped, read it again, and said, "This is a clerical error." She set it down and went back to the workshop. That was her first mistake. The second one was not calling Sandra Mitchell in legal that afternoon. The third was not calling her grandfather. She didn't do either. She assumed it was nothing. Noise from a bitter employee. Legacy thinking. 1 week passed. During that week, Monarch continued operating out of buildings it did not have permission to occupy. Jenna continued her optimization initiatives. She replaced 2 more of the maintenance vendors I'd negotiated over the past decade with a tech startup called FreshSpace that charged 40% more for half the service coverage. She scheduled a board presentation about Q3 strategic repositioning. She ordered new lobby signage. She did not read the legal opinion letter attached to the demand notice. She did not review the county deed records. She did not ask anyone on her staff to verify property ownership. On the 7th day after the firing, a Monday, Sandra Mitchell finally got the envelope. Not because Jenna forwarded it, because the satellite office manager, confused by the legal language, walked it over to legal himself and dropped it on Sandra's desk with a post-it note that said, "Is this real?" Sandra read it. Then she read it again. Then she opened her laptop and pulled up the county property records for the headquarters building. Deed registered to Hensley Asset Partners, LLC. Sole member, Frank Douglas Hensley. Filed 2016, current. Taxes paid. She checked the satellite office. Same. The client meeting center. Same. The parking structure. Same. Sandra Mitchell sat at her desk for a full minute without moving. Then she picked up her phone, put it down, and picked it up again. She did not call Jenna. She called William Kirkwood. It was 4:15 p.m. on a Monday. William was at home. I imagine he was in that oak-paneled study, the one that smells like old leather and cigar smoke, the one where he'd shaken my hand in 2016 and said, "You're saving my company, Frank." Sandra said 5 words. "We have a situation, Bill." She read him the deed registrations. She read him the demand letter. She read him the legal opinion from Ray Ellis. She told him there was no lease. She told him there had never been a lease. She told him that Monarch Commercial Group was operating its entire corporate footprint out of 4 properties owned by the man his granddaughter had fired 8 days ago. I'm told William Kirkwood was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "How did no one know this?" Sandra said, "Because no one checked. The transaction was in 2016. Outside counsel handled it. Your handshake was the only agreement. It was never in our files because it was never our transaction. It was his." William asked, "Does Jenna know?" Jenna received the notice a week ago. She called it a clerical error. Silence. Then William Kirkwood said something I heard about later from Dale, who heard it from Sandra's paralegal, who was sitting outside Sandra's office when she made the call. "Get Jenna on the phone. Get the board on the phone. And find out if Frank Hensley will take my call." That evening, my phone rang. 6:47 p.m. I was on the back deck. Rex was lying at my feet. The bourbon was poured, Charlotte skyline going orange and purple in the distance. I looked at the screen. William Kirkwood's personal number. I'd had it memorized for 17 years. I watched it ring 4 times. Click. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 7:12. Again at 7:38. Again at 8:15. I know the exact times because my phone logs them, and I looked the next morning. 4 calls. No voicemails. William Kirkwood was not a man who left voicemails. He was a man who expected you to pick up. I didn't. Rex lifted his head after the 4th call, looked at me the way labs do when they know something has shifted, but they're waiting for you to explain it. I scratched behind his ears, finished the bourbon, went to bed. Wednesday morning, 10 days after the firing, Ray called me at 8:06 a.m. Emergency board meeting. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Monarch's conference room. Sandra Mitchell's office sent the notice to all board members last night. You've been formally invited to attend as, and I'm reading this directly, the title holder of record for properties material to ongoing corporate operations. They want me in the room. They need you in the room. There's a difference. Did Bill call you? 3 times. I told his assistant I'd relay the message. I didn't relay the message. I poured black coffee, stood at the kitchen counter. Rex was eating breakfast. The house was quiet the way it always is now. The kind of quiet you stop fighting after 6 years and start building inside of instead. I'll be there, I said. Wear the blue suit. And Frank. Yeah. Don't say a word until they ask you a direct question. Let the paperwork talk first. Thursday, 10 a.m., Monarch Commercial Group's corporate headquarters. The building I owned. I parked in the garage. My garage. Space 14, ground level, the one closest to the elevator bank. It didn't have a reserved sign. It didn't need one. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. The boardroom. I'd been in that room 600 times over 17 years. Polished mahogany table, 20 feet long. Floor-to-ceiling windows on the east wall overlooking the Charlotte skyline. 12 leather chairs. I knew the model number of those chairs because I'd ordered them in 2014 when the originals started cracking at the armrests. The room was already full. 7 board members seated around the table. Sandra Mitchell at the far end with a legal pad and 2 file boxes. William Kirkwood at the head of the table in a navy blazer and open collar, no tie. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in 10 days. His hands were flat on the table. He wasn't talking to anyone. Jenna Kirkwood sat to his right. She was wearing a blazer I'd never seen before. Her posture was rigid. Perfect teeth, visible in a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She had a notebook open in front of her with handwritten notes. The top line, visible from where I entered, read, "Talking points, lease negotiation." She thought this was a negotiation. The HR representative from my firing was not present. Dale Cooper was not present. This was a board matter now. There was one empty chair. It was directly across from Jenna, at the opposite side of the table from William. In front of it, someone, Sandra, I assume, had placed a printed nameplate card on heavyweight stock. It read, Frank D. Hensley, title holder of record. I sat down. The room went quiet, the way rooms go quiet when everyone has been talking about someone and that someone walks in. William Kirkwood looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from crying, from not sleeping. I recognized the look. I'd worn it myself during Carol's hospice. Frank, he said. Bill. That was all either of us said for 6 seconds. The room held its breath. Sandra Mitchell cleared her throat and opened the first file box. I'll summarize the situation for the board. She was professional, precise. Her voice didn't waver, but her hands moved faster than normal as she distributed packets to each board member. 8 packets. 1 for each board member. 1 for me. None for Jenna. Jenna noticed. Sandra, I'll need a copy of whatever you're distributing. Sandra looked at William. William didn't look at Jenna. He gave Sandra a single nod. Sandra handed Jenna a packet. Then she began. In 2016, during a liquidity crisis requiring approximately $14 million in 90 days, Monarch's founder, William Kirkwood, sold 4 properties to an outside LLC at fair market value. The properties are our corporate headquarters at this address, the satellite operations office on Tryon Street, the primary client meeting center on 4th Street, and the central parking structure serving all 3 buildings. The purchasing entity was Hensley Asset Partners, LLC. The sole member and manager of that LLC is Frank Douglas Hensley, seated to my left. She paused. Let that settle. The transaction was conducted at arm's length by outside counsel. Deeds were recorded with the county registrar's office. All filings are current. All property taxes have been paid in full by the LLC for 8 consecutive years. There is no written lease agreement between Hensley Asset Partners LLC and Monarch Commercial Group. There has never been one. Monarch has been occupying these 4 properties on the basis of a verbal understanding between Mr. Kirkwood and Mr. Hensley that was never formalized into a legal instrument. Board member number 3, Arthur Graves, who'd been on the board since 2009, leaned forward. You're telling us we don't have a lease on our own headquarters? It's not our headquarters, Sandra said. It's Mr. Hensley's headquarters. We are holdover occupants with no legal right of continued occupancy. Jenna's smile disappeared. I watched it go. It didn't collapse all at once. It receded, like water pulling back from a shoreline before something large arrives. She opened her packet, read the first page, flipped to the deed, flipped to the LLC operating agreement, flipped back. Her lips moved slightly, reading it twice, 3 times. This can't be right, she said. This has to be challengeable. We've been operating here for 8 years. That establishes tenancy. Sandra shook her head. Under North Carolina commercial unlawful detainer statutes, verbal occupancy arrangements without a written lease do not establish protected tenancy for commercial entities. The title holder can demand formal lease execution or vacate at any time with proper notice. Proper notice was served 11 days ago. Jenna looked at her grandfather. Granddad, you knew about this? William Kirkwood spoke without looking at her. His voice was flat, tired. The voice of a 74-year-old man watching the thing he built for 37 years crack down the middle because of a decision he made at a kitchen table. I sold those buildings to Frank in 2016 because he was the only person willing to save this company when the banks wouldn't. He paid fair market value. He asked for nothing in return. I shook his hand and told him we'd work out the paperwork later. He paused. I never worked out the paperwork. That's negligent, Jenna said. Her voice was climbing. That's a failure of basic due diligence. Yes, William said. It was. It was my failure. And your failure was firing the man who owned the ground under your yoga studio without reading a single property record. The room went silent. Jenna turned to me. For the first time since I'd sat down, she looked directly at me. Not through me. Not past me. At me. Frank, I'm sure we can work something out. A long-term lease. Fair market rates. We're all reasonable people here. I let 3 seconds pass. I counted them the way I counted those 11 seconds in the hallway outside her office 3 weeks before the firing. The way you count when the decision has already been made and you're just letting the other person arrive at the understanding. No, I said. No? What do you mean, no? I mean, no. Monarch Commercial Group will not be receiving a lease offer from Hensley Asset Partners LLC. Not today, not next week. Not at any rate. Arthur Graves spoke. Frank, what are you proposing? I'm not proposing anything. I'm informing the board that I have executed an exclusive leasing agreement with Pinnacle Commercial for the headquarters building. They take occupancy in 45 days. The satellite office and client meeting center will be marketed to other tenants beginning next month. Monarch's demand notices require vacate or lease execution within 30 days. Since there will be no lease, Monarch has 30 days to vacate all 4 properties. Jenna's face drained of color. Not slowly. All at once. Like someone had pulled a plug behind her eyes. You can't do that. I can. I own the buildings. Pinnacle is our biggest competitor. I know. Sandra Mitchell was writing furiously. Arthur Graves had taken off his glasses and was rubbing his eyes. 2 other board members were whispering to each other. William Kirkwood hadn't moved. He sat at the head of that table with his hands flat on the mahogany and stared at a point somewhere past the windows, past the Charlotte skyline, past anything in that room. "Frank," William said quietly, "I let family cloud my business judgment. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what she did, and I'm sorry for what I failed to do. But this company employs 1,200 people. I know exactly how many people it employs, Bill. I managed the facilities they worked in for 17 years. I knew their names. I fixed their heating systems at midnight. I replaced their parking garage lighting on weekends so it wouldn't disrupt Monday morning traffic flow. And your granddaughter called me dead weight. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to." "I want to call a vote," Arthur Graves said. "I'm moving to terminate Jenna Kirkwood as Chief Operating Officer, effective immediately, and to formally request that Mr. Hensley consider negotiating lease terms with Monarch under new leadership." William Kirkwood closed his eyes, opened them. Seconded. All in favor. 7 hands, every board member. William's hand went up last. 7-0. Jenna stood up. Her chair scraped backward on the hardwood. Her notebook slid off the table. The talking points she'd prepared for a negotiation that was never going to happen scattered across the floor like leaves. "You can't, Granddad. You can't let them—" "Jenna." William's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sit down. It's done." She didn't sit down. She stood there, looking around the room for one sympathetic face. She didn't find one. The board members wouldn't look at her. Sandra Mitchell was organizing her files. The Charlotte skyline poured light through the windows onto a table I'd picked out myself. Building security arrived 4 minutes later. 2 men. The same company I'd contracted in 2017. I'd negotiated their service agreement personally. $127,000 per year, 3-year renewal cycle, and I'd gotten a 15% discount because I bundled all 4 properties. They escorted Jenna Kirkwood out of the building. My building. Arthur Graves turned to me after she left. "Frank, will you reconsider the Pinnacle agreement?" I looked at him, looked at William, looked at the nameplate in front of me. Frank D. Hensley, title holder of record. "No," I said. "The agreement is signed. Pinnacle moves in within 45 days. I wish the board well in finding new accommodations." I stood up, buttoned my jacket, picked up my copy of the packet Sandra had distributed, and slid it into the leather portfolio I'd carried in. The portfolio Carol had given me for my 40th birthday, engraved initials on the clasp. FDH. I nodded to William on my way out. He nodded back. Neither of us said anything. There was nothing left to say that the county records hadn't already said. I took the elevator down, walked through the lobby, pushed through the glass doors into the parking garage. Space 14. My truck was right where I left it. I sat in the driver's seat. Engine off. 11:22 a.m. on a Thursday. The concrete around me hummed with the low vibration of a building full of people who had just learned they had 30 days to leave. I drove home. Over the next 45 days, Pinnacle Commercial moved into the headquarters building. Their signage went up on a Tuesday. I know because Dale Cooper sent me a photo. No caption. Just the image of a Pinnacle logo where the Monarch logo had been. Over the next 18 months, I collected $62 million in total property income and lease penalties from the transition. Pinnacle signed a 15-year lease at above market rates because the location was the best in Charlotte, and they knew it. The satellite office leased to a regional law firm. The client meeting center leased to a financial services company within 90 days. Monarch lost 3 anchor tenants who refused to relocate. Their development pipeline collapsed without a permanent headquarters. Client confidence evaporated. The company William Kirkwood had built from a 2-man operation in 1987 was sold 18 months later at a 71% discount to its 2023 valuation. $2.6 billion became a fraction. The acquiring firm kept some of the staff, not all. William Kirkwood retired fully. I heard he plays golf 5 days a week, now instead of 3. I don't hold a grudge against Bill. He built something real. He just trusted bloodline over competence, and by the time he realized the mistake, the county records had already made the argument for him. Jenna Kirkwood's LinkedIn went dark 3 weeks after the board meeting. The Wellness Forward post is still up. I don't check. Dale told me. Dale Cooper got hired by the acquiring firm. Senior Facilities Manager. I wrote his recommendation letter. Marcus called me that Sunday after the board meeting. Our regular call. He asked how my week was. Busy, I said. Good busy or bad busy? Different. The kind where things settle into where they should have been, all along. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, "You seem different lately, Dad. Less stressed. Like you're actually here when you're here." "I am here," I said. "Are you going to come to Nashville soon? I want to show you the bridge project I'm working on." "Next weekend. I'll drive down Friday." "Bring Rex." "Always." I hung up, stood on the back deck. 3 fingers of bourbon. The good stuff. Rex lying at my feet, his chin on his paws, watching the tree line the way old dogs do when they've decided the world is acceptable. Charlotte was going dark. City lights coming on one window at a time. Somewhere out there, Monarch Commercial Group was packing boxes in buildings that had never belonged to them. Somewhere out there, a 24-year-old was learning that optimizing a footprint means nothing when you don't own the ground. Sometimes power doesn't announce itself. It sits in county records for 8 years, filed clean, taxes paid, waiting quietly for someone to make the mistake of thinking patience is weakness. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button and let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe and ring that notification bell to get alerts about new stories like this one. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.